My name is Rachel Turner, and what I'm about to share still lingers in the corners of my mind, like a shadow that refuses to fade. I never thought a simple favor could create such a powerful ripple in my life. My marriage, my identity, everything began so innocently, so predictably. But life has a way of twisting the ordinary into something unrecognizable, doesn't it? My husband Jeremy and I had been married for 9 years. From the outside, we looked like the perfect couple. 2 kids, a beautiful home in the suburbs of Raleigh, North Carolina, and weekends filled with soccer games and barbecues. But beneath that perfect picture, small cracks had already started to form. Jeremy was always busy, late nights at work, endless meetings, and those weekend golf trips that never seemed to end. I never questioned him much. I just kept the house together, cared for the kids, and did my best to be the kind of wife who kept everything running smoothly. Then came Caleb. He was Jeremy's oldest friend, charming, confident, freshly divorced. I hadn't seen him in years, but suddenly Jeremy was inviting him over more often, maybe to help him through his rough patch, or just for company. Caleb was staying at a rental across town, and before long, the 2 of them were like college boys again, laughing, reminiscing, filling the house with stories of wild parties and youthful memories. After a while, I started to feel like an outsider in my own home. One Wednesday afternoon, while I was picking up groceries, Jeremy called. His tone was light, almost casual, like he was asking me to grab milk on the way home. "Hey babe," he said. "Caleb's car broke down near downtown, and I'm still stuck at work. Could you do me a favor and pick him up? He doesn't really know anyone else around here." For a moment, I hesitated. I had errands to finish, and the kids would be home soon. But in the end, I agreed. "Sure," I said. "I guess I can swing by." When I arrived at the mechanic's lot, Caleb was leaning against the fence, dressed in jeans and a plain white t-shirt, looking worn out and a little irritated. But when he spotted me, his face brightened. "Rachel, you're a lifesaver," he said with a grin. The drive was light and easy. He cracked jokes, made me laugh, and for the first time in a long while, I felt a spark of something I couldn't quite name, and told me stories about his failed marriage. Stories that didn't sound bitter or resentful, just honest. There was a rawness to his words that drew me in. He made vulnerability look like something beautiful, something I hadn't seen in Jeremy for a long time. When we pulled up to his rental, Caleb asked if I could come in for just a minute while he grabbed the money he owed the mechanic. I hesitated for a second, then followed him inside. The place was barely furnished. A couch, a TV, and a few unopened boxes scattered around. He handed me a cold soda before disappearing into the bedroom to find his wallet. When he returned, instead of passing me the cash right away, he sat down next to me on the couch. That small gesture, so casual yet oddly intimate, caught me off guard. "You know," he said, his tone soft. "Jeremy's a lucky guy. Not every wife would drop everything to help her husband's friend." I smiled awkwardly, unsure how to respond. I tried to laugh it off, stood to leave, but then he touched my hand. Just a gentle brush, warm and uncertain. Our eyes met, and something flickered there. Something I didn't want to name. My heart skipped, and I stepped back, pretending not to notice. After that day, something shifted. Caleb started texting me. At first it was innocent. "Thanks again for the ride." Then came the second message. "You looked really nice today." I didn't respond right away. I told myself it was harmless, but I caught myself checking my phone more often, rereading his messages, smiling at his teasing emojis. I felt seen, wanted. It was something I hadn't felt in years. Jeremy didn't notice. He still came home late, worn out from work, distracted and distant. The space between us widened, without either of us saying a word. I told myself Caleb's attention was nothing serious, just a harmless distraction. But then came the second favor. Caleb mentioned he had a job interview coming up in Charlotte and needed help polishing his resume. He said Jeremy was too swamped with work and not exactly the writing type. I told myself it was no big deal, just helping out a friend. We agreed to meet at a quiet coffee shop where we spent nearly 2 hours going over his work history. He listened so intently, hanging on every word I said, and his compliments came effortlessly. When I pointed out his strengths, he reached across the table and took my hand, just for a moment, but long enough for my pulse to quicken. His touch lingered, deliberate, sending a rush of warmth through me. I pulled my hand back, my cheeks burning, but he only smiled. "You have no idea what you do to people," he said softly. I didn't know what to say. I laughed it off, pretending it was just harmless charm. But the words stayed with me long after we left the cafe. It wasn't long after that when Caleb showed up at my house while Jeremy was at work. He said he needed help printing some documents. I didn't see any harm in it. It was the middle of the day, the kids were at school, and it was just printing, right? But the moment he stepped inside, I felt a strange tension in the air. We chatted in the kitchen while I brewed coffee. He stood a little too close. His compliments bolder this time. His gaze softer, but more intent. Then, without warning, he reached out, brushed a loose strand of hair from my face, and whispered, "You deserve more than being invisible." Before I could react, he kissed me. It wasn't forceful or wild. It was gentle, almost reverent, filled with emotion. And to my own surprise, I kissed him back. Only for a second, but it was enough to shake something inside me. "This can't happen." "Caleb," I whispered, stepping back. He nodded quietly, eyes heavy with understanding, and walked out without another word. That night, I couldn't sleep. The guilt gnawed at me, but beneath it was something even more dangerous. A longing I hadn't felt in years. Desire. Confusion. The aching reminder that I was still capable of wanting, of being wanted. The days that followed were silent. Caleb didn't text or call, and oddly I missed him. Jeremy didn't notice the shift in me, or maybe he did and just chose to ignore it. Then, one Friday night, Caleb showed up again. He and Jeremy had planned to watch a game together. I tried to stay out of sight, keeping busy in the kitchen. But every time I passed the living room, I felt his eyes on me. Not just a passing glance. He was watching. It sent a chill down my spine and heat to my cheeks all at once. Later that night, Jeremy passed out on the couch. Too much beer and laughter taking their toll. Caleb stood in the kitchen, sipping water, his expression unreadable. When our eyes met, he spoke softly. "We need to talk," he said. Without a word, I followed him outside. The air was cool and still, and the stars hung heavy above us. Above were clearer than I'd ever seen them. The kind of night sky that makes everything else feel quieter, smaller. "I'm sorry about the other day," Caleb said finally, his voice low. "But I meant what I said. You're amazing. And if Jeremy can't see that, he doesn't deserve you." The words hit me harder than I expected. My throat tightened, and I felt tears burning behind my eyes. "Don't say that," I whispered, shaking my head. "I'm not trying to ruin anything," he said softly. "But you've been there for me more than anyone else. And somewhere along the way, I fell for you." My breath caught. I wanted to deny it, to tell him he was wrong. But deep down, I knew part of me had fallen too. That night, nothing happened between us physically, but something inside both of us shifted forever. Emotionally, a line had been crossed. In the weeks that followed, our connection only grew stronger. There were stolen glances, brief touches that lingered too long, confessions whispered when no one else was around. And then, one night after Jeremy left for a business trip, Caleb came over. I didn't invite him, but I didn't send him away either. We didn't say much that night. The silence was heavy, filled with everything we'd been holding back. And by morning, when I looked at myself in the mirror, I couldn't recognize the woman staring back. What had I done? The guilt tore through me. I began to avoid Caleb, to shut him out. I grew distant with Jeremy, too cold, too withdrawn. I felt trapped between two versions of myself. The loyal wife I once was, and the woman who had lost control of her heart. Eventually, Caleb left town. He said it was for the best, for all of us. Jeremy never learned the full truth, but he knew something had changed. He could feel it in the way I pulled away, in my late-night tears, in the way I stiffened at his touch. Months later, we started therapy. I didn't tell him about Caleb, but I told him how lonely I'd felt, how invisible I had become. We're still working on it. It's not perfect, but at least there's effort now. As for Caleb, I haven't heard from him in over a year. Sometimes I catch myself wondering where he is, what he's doing, whether he ever thinks of me. But more often, I wonder about the woman I turned into during that chapter of my life. It all started with one favor, one ride, one moment that changed everything.